"You don't know me," Alex muttered under his breath, voice steady despite the thunder. "But I know what they did to you." The rain didn't just fall, it attacked. It hammered the canopy of the Pacific Northwest until the entire forest trembled, until mud swallowed boot prints and thunder smothered every other sound. Every sound except one. A deep, metallic vibration ripped through the storm. Alex Cole froze mid-step, head snapping toward the underbrush. That noise didn't belong to the forest. It wasn't wind. It wasn't thunder. It was steel under strain. He pushed through the dripping ferns, boots sinking into cold earth, olive-green tactical shirt plastered to his muscular frame. Rain ran down his jawline, catching in the dark stubble that shadowed his face. His short black hair clung to his forehead, and his grip tightened around the heavy bolt cutters hanging at his side. Then he saw it. Orange against emerald. Power against prison. A full-grown Bengal tiger, 500 pounds of coiled muscle, was thrashing in a snare so thick it looked like it had been forged for an anchor chain. The rusted steel cable had bitten deep into its front left paw. Blood diluted into rainwater and disappeared into the mud. The tiger's body was crouched low, muscles rippling beneath mud-streaked fur. Its jaws snapped open in a violent snarl, 4-inch canines flashing inches above the ground. Its golden eyes burned, not just with pain but with fury. Alex didn't reach for a weapon. He dropped to his knees. The mud soaked through his cargo pants instantly. His combat boots sank deep as he slid closer, closer, straight into the predator's strike zone. One twitch, one flash of instinct. That jaw could close around his skull. But Alex didn't look at the teeth. He locked eyes with the animal. He had spent years dismantling exotic trafficking rings across the American wilderness. Years moving like a ghost through forests most men were too afraid to enter. He trusted tracks more than people, trusted silence more than promises. And what he saw in the tiger's eyes wasn't just rage. It was calculation. Pain, yes, but not mindless violence. The cable groaned again, tightening as the tiger shifted. The mechanical growl that had drawn Alex in vibrated through his chest. He slowly raised the bolt cutters. The tiger's lip curled higher. Rain streamed between them. "You don't know me," Alex muttered under his breath, voice steady despite the thunder. "But I know what they did to you." The forest felt like it was holding its breath. He clamped the jaws of the cutters around the steel cable. The tiger's paw twitched. Its massive head lowered slightly, muscles bunching. Alex felt the weight of that decision pressing against his spine. He worked alone for a reason. Human backup slowed you down. Human backup got you betrayed. In this world, hesitation got animals killed. And maybe today, it would get him killed too. He squeezed. The cable resisted. The tiger's snarl faded into a low rumble. He squeezed harder. With a sharp metallic crack, the snare snapped. The recoil flung mud into Alex's face. He staggered back, expecting the explosion of fur and fangs. Instead, silence. The tiger didn't pounce. It didn't flee. It stood there, towering, rain cascading down its vibrant orange and black coat. Its injured paw trembled as it tested its weight. And then it did something no instinct manual could explain. It stepped toward him. Alex's breath caught. The massive head lowered. A rough, wet nose nudged his shoulder. Not a shove. Not a threat. A nudge. As if confirming something. Then the tiger turned away and limped a few paces into the forest. It stopped. Looked back. A low chuff rumbled from its chest. Waiting. Alex blinked rain from his eyes. He had tracked cartel poachers through swamps. He had dismantled cages filled with terrified animals. He had exposed private hunting games funded by men whose bank accounts could buy silence. But he had never been invited. The tiger took another step. Stopped. Looked back again. The message was unmistakable. Follow. The storm intensified, wind bending branches overhead. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like artillery. Alex rose slowly, bolt cutters still in hand. His heart pounded, not from fear of the animal, but from the implication. If there was a snare here, there were others. If someone had the audacity to trap a Bengal tiger in the Pacific Northwest, they weren't amateurs. They were organized, funded, and close. The tiger began moving deeper into the forest, limping but determined, not fleeing blindly, navigating, choosing a path. Alex followed. Every few yards, the tiger glanced back to ensure he was still there. Not as prey, not as threat, as partner. And that was the moment everything shifted. Because this wasn't just about one animal in a trap anymore. This was about a system hidden in plain sight. A hunting syndicate bold enough to import apex predators into American wilderness for sport. A network that believed money erased morality. A game designed for billionaires who wanted trophies too exotic for legal safaris. And Alex Cole had just stepped directly into their storm. He moved through the rain-soaked underbrush, boots sinking, breath steady. The tiger guided him across a washed-out ravine that would have swallowed him alone. It avoided certain trails, human trails. It skirted patrol routes Alex hadn't even spotted yet. This wasn't random. The deeper they went, the louder the distant hum of generators became beneath the storm. Then through the trees, faint but unmistakable floodlights. Cages, shapes packing inside them. The tiger stopped at the ridge, overlooking a hidden compound carved into the forest floor. Below, men in dark rain gear moved between reinforced pens. Exotic animals, leopards, rare wolves, even a young white rhino, were trapped in rising water as the downpour threatened to flood the entire ravine. A high-stakes illegal hunting game. Alex's jaw tightened. The tiger's ears flattened. The storm wasn't the only thing about to break. And if you think what happened next was just instinct, just animal rage, you're wrong. Because when Alex was later cornered, disarmed, and staring down the barrels of mercenaries hired to erase witnesses, the tiger didn't attack like a beast. It attacked like an ally. But before we get there, before the storm turns into war, before steel meets claw, before justice roars louder than gunfire, you need to understand something. This channel exists because stories like this are real. Because out there, in forests most people will never step foot in, battles are being fought every single day between greed and guardianship. If you believe animals deserve defenders, if you believe courage doesn't always wear a badge, then don't just watch silently. Subscribe to the Wild Samaritan. Because every time you choose not to, another story like this fades into the shadows where syndicates thrive. Stay until the end. See how a lone wolf tracker finally learns he doesn't have to fight alone. See how a tiger, an apex predator, becomes something far more powerful than a weapon. And ask yourself, when the storm comes, will you look away? Or will you stand with those who step into it? The forest had a way of swallowing men whole. Sound disappeared first, then direction, then certainty. By the time the storm rolled in from the Pacific, Alex Cole had already been tracking for 9 hours. Rain turned the canopy into a roaring ceiling of green and gray, and the forest floor into a sucking, treacherous swamp. His boots pulled free from the mud with wet, hollow sounds as he moved forward, head down, eyes scanning. He preferred days like this. Storms kept civilians indoors, kept poachers complacent, and most importantly, rain told the truth. It sharpened tracks before washing them away. He crouched near a patch of churned earth, fingertips brushing the edge of a print pressed deep into the mud. Not elk. Not cougar. Too large, too round, the toes too evenly spaced. Alex's jaw tightened. A paw print that size didn't belong in the Pacific Northwest. The print was fresh, water still pooling in its center, edges crisp despite the downpour. The animal had passed through less than an hour ago. He stood slowly, bolt cutters hanging from his pack, binoculars knocking lightly against his chest. His olive-green tactical shirt clung to his broad shoulders, sleeves rolled to reveal mud-streaked forearms corded with muscle. Rain streamed down his temples and into his eyes, but he didn't blink. A Bengal tiger had no business being here. And if there was one here, it meant only one thing. Someone had brought it. He followed the trail uphill through thick ferns and slick roots. Broken branches marked a path of violent struggle. The forest felt wrong, birds silent, smaller animals vanished. Then he heard it. A metallic groan beneath the thunder. He froze. The sound came again, a strained mechanical vibration, like steel under unbearable tension. Alex pushed through a curtain of dripping leaves and stepped into a clearing churned to ruin. Orange and black exploded against green. The tiger was massive. Even crouched low in pain, it radiated power. Mud streaked its vibrant coat, rain plastering fur flat against muscle. A rusted steel cable cinched tight around its front left paw, the snare anchored to a buried stake that refused to yield. The animal thrashed once, and the cable bit deeper. Blood bled into rainwater and disappeared. Its head snapped toward him instantly. Golden eyes locked onto his. Its lips peeled back in a snarl that exposed canines long as fingers. The sound that tore from its throat wasn't just anger. It was fury sharpened by agony. Alex didn't step back. He slowly unhooked the bolt cutters from his pack. 500 pounds of apex predator stood between him and survival. He moved forward anyway. Every instinct the tiger possessed screamed at it to strike. Every survival lesson Alex had learned warned him not to get close. But he had seen this before. Different species, same cruelty. Steel meant humans, and humans meant cages. He dropped to one knee in the mud. The tiger lunged forward as far as the cable allowed, jaws snapping inches from his face. Hot breath mixed with rain. He didn't flinch. He kept his eyes steady, breathing slow and deliberate. "I'm not your enemy," he murmured, voice nearly lost in the storm. The cable groaned again as the tiger pulled back, muscles rippling beneath its soaked coat. Its injured paw trembled violently. Alex slid the jaws of the bolt cutters around the steel. The tiger's rumble deepened. One swipe could open his throat. One bite could crush his skull. He squeezed. The cable resisted. He adjusted his grip, bracing the cutters against his thigh. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating them in white. He squeezed harder. The tiger's snarl faltered. Their eyes locked. Something shifted. The animal stopped thrashing. It went still. Not submissive. Controlled. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Alex pushed with everything he had. The steel snapped with a sharp crack that echoed through the clearing. The recoil sent him backward into the mud. He braced for impact. For teeth. For pain. But none came. The tiger remained exactly where it stood. Free. Its massive chest heaved as it tested weight on the wounded paw. It could have ended him in a second. Instead, it stepped toward him. Slowly. Deliberately. Alex's heart pounded against his ribs. The tiger lowered its head. Its nose brushed his shoulder. A rough, wet nudge. Not a warning. An acknowledgement. Then it turned away. It limped several steps into the trees before stopping. Rain streamed down its back as it glanced over its shoulder. Waiting. A low chuff vibrated from its chest. Alex pushed himself to his feet. He had expected one of two outcomes, death or disappearance. This was neither. The tiger took another step, then paused again, eyes fixed on him. Falulu. The word wasn't spoken, but it was unmistakable. He hesitated only a moment before slinging the bolt cutters over his shoulder and stepping after it. The trek became brutal almost immediately. Rain intensified, turning slopes into slides. The tiger navigated with certainty, choosing paths that avoided open ground. It limped, but it never slowed more than necessary. Several times it stopped to ensure he was still behind it. Once they reached a ravine that had collapsed under rushing water. The drop was steep, mud slewing away in thick sheets. Alex tested the edge and nearly lost his footing. The tiger moved past him, descending at an angle where exposed roots formed natural steps. It paused halfway down, looking back, almost impatient. He followed its path and made it across safely. Without the tiger, he would have taken the wrong descent. Without him, the tiger would still be chained to steel. Trust formed without words. The deeper they moved, the more signs of human interference appeared. Boot prints half erased by rain, tire tracks disguised beneath fallen branches, cigarette butts ground into soil. The hum reached them faintly at first. Low. Mechanical. Generators. The tiger slowed. Its ears flattened. They crested a ridge, overlooking a hollow carved unnaturally into the forest floor. Floodlights pierced the rain in harsh white beams. Below, a compound sprawled between towering firs, temporary structures reinforced with steel fencing and tarps weighed down by sandbags, all of it half submerged in rising water. Cages lined the perimeter. Inside them moved shadows that didn't belong to this continent. A spotted leopard paced violently, tail lashing. A pair of rare black wolves huddled in a corner, water lapping at their legs. Farther down, a juvenile white rhino struggled against reinforced bars, panic visible in every movement. Alex's stomach tightened. This wasn't simple poaching. This was staging. A playground for predators in tailored suits who wanted trophies too rare for legality. Men in dark rain gear moved between the cages, rifles slung casually over shoulders. Laughter carried faintly through the storm. The tiger beside him emitted a low, controlled growl. Its body had gone rigid, not from pain now but recognition. It hadn't escaped by accident. It had been meant for this. The ravine was flooding steadily. Water pooled higher around the cages with each passing minute. If the animals weren't hunted first, they would drown. Alex scanned the compound, mapping positions, counting weapons, identifying blind spots. Alone, it would be nearly impossible. He glanced down at the tiger. It didn't look at him. Its gaze was locked on the men below. The storm intensified, rain blurring the world into streaks of silver. For the first time in years, Alex felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. Not isolation. Not the burden of fighting alone. Partnership. He exhaled slowly. "All right," he whispered. The tiger flicked its ear but didn't move. Floodlights fluttered as thunder cracked directly overhead. Down below, one of the men shouted orders as water surged against the lower cages. Time was collapsing. The forest that had once hidden this operation was now threatening to expose it. Alex adjusted the strap on his pack, eyes narrowing as he studied the layout one final time. The tiger shifted closer to him, shoulder brushing his leg. Not by accident. Not by instinct alone. As if choosing. The storm roared. And in the hollow below, greed believed it still held control. It didn't yet know that something far older and far more relentless had already stepped into its shadows. Rain rolled off the ridge in silver sheets, turning the hollow below into a rising basin of murky water and electric light. The tiger's muscles coiled beside Alex, every line of its body angled toward the men who paced between cages with rifles slung casually across their chests. Alex exhaled slowly. "Stay," he murmured, not because he believed the animal understood the word, but because he needed to say it. The tiger's ears flicked. Its golden gaze shifted to him for a fraction of a second, then back to the compound. He touched the side of its neck briefly, just enough to feel the warmth beneath soaked fur, then began descending the ridge alone. Mud threatened to betray him with every step. He moved low, balanced, the way he had learned years ago when operating beyond radio range and outside jurisdictional patience. His olive shirt clung to his back, boots finding silent purchase along roots and exposed rock. The perimeter fence was temporary but reinforced. He skirted it, finding the vehicle staging area first, 3 off-road trucks and a smaller transport van, all idling intermittently to power lights and pumps. He slipped beneath the rear axle of the first truck and severed the brake line with efficient precision. The second vehicle lost its ignition wiring in under 30 seconds. At the van, he disabled the battery and tore out the main fuse block. No easy exits. The generator shed hummed to his left, tarp snapping violently in the wind. He ducked inside, rainwater dripping from his sleeves, and located the communications console, satellite uplink, shortwave radios, a signal booster mounted to a tree outside. He cut the primary cable. Then the backup. The hum stuttered. Floodlights flickered but remained on. They would have a few minutes before someone noticed. Alex slipped back into the rain and moved toward the cages. Up close, the horror was worse. A leopard slammed itself against bars slick with water. A pair of wolves snapped anxiously at rising currents pooling around their legs. The young white rhino's breaths came in panicked bursts, horns scraping steel as it tried to back away from the flood. "Easy," Alex whispered, kneeling beside the first padlock. His fingers worked quickly with a tension wrench and pick, movements automatic despite the cold numbing his hands. The lock clicked open. He moved to the next. Voices rose somewhere behind him. He ignored them. Another lock gave way. Water surged ankle-deep now. A heavy boot splashed behind him. "Well, I'll be damned." Alex didn't turn immediately. He finished seating the pick into the third lock before glancing over his shoulder. A man stood beneath the glare of a floodlight, rifle leveled casually but steadily. Expensive rain jacket, clean beard, calm eyes that had never once known hunger. Behind him, 4 armed mercenaries fanned out, weapons raised. "You're a long way from any hiking trail," the man said, voice almost amused. "And you've just made yourself very expensive." Alex rose slowly, hands visible, rain running down his face. "You don't have the permits for any of this," he replied evenly. The man smiled faintly. "Permits are for people who expect to be caught." A mercenary moved behind Alex, wrenching the bolt cutters from his pack and kicking his legs apart. Cold metal pressed against the base of his skull. The floodwater reached mid-calf. "You cut my communications," the leader continued, glancing toward the darkened generator shed. "You sabotaged my vehicles. That was bold." He stepped closer, studying Alex's face. "And foolish." The leopard roared inside its cage. The wolves howled in rising panic. The man's expression hardened. "You were supposed to be part of the entertainment tomorrow. Now you're just an inconvenience." The rifle's safety clicked off. Alex's heartbeat slowed. He didn't look at the weapon. He looked past them, into the tree line. For a fraction of a second, he saw nothing but rain. Then the forest blinked. orange and black separated from shadow. The first mercenary never saw it coming. The tiger moved without a sound until the last possible second. Then it exploded forward, a blur of muscle and rain. Its shoulder slammed into the nearest armed man, sending him sprawling into floodwater. The rifle skidded away. Chaos ignited. The tiger didn't go for the throat. It went for the weapons. A second mercenary fired wildly, bullet ripping through a tarp overhead. The tiger swatted the rifle aside with terrifying precision, claws carving wood from the stock. The man stumbled backward, losing grip. The leader shouted orders, raising his own weapon, but the tiger lunged low, striking his arm. The rifle spun from his grasp into the water. Not lethal. Calculated. Alex twisted free from the distracted guard, driving an elbow into the man's throat before diving for the nearest dropped weapon. He didn't fire. He kicked it deeper into the flood instead. The compound dissolved into noise, animals roaring, men shouting, rain hammering down. The tiger moved like controlled lightning, intercepting any hand that reached for a gun. A mercenary tried to draw a sidearm. The tiger knocked him flat with a swipe that tore fabric but spared flesh. It wasn't hunting. It was defending. Buying time. Alex reached the remaining cages and resumed picking locks with frantic precision, one by one. They sprang open. The wolves bolted first, slipping through water and disappearing into forest shadow. The leopard hesitated only a second before leaping free, vanishing into rain. The young rhino required effort. Alex unlatched the gate fully and slapped the metal hard. The animal surged forward, horns smashing through a weakened section of fence, creating an exit point large enough for others to follow. The hunters retreated, slipping in rising water, unarmed and overwhelmed by the very creatures they had caged for sport. One of them tried to climb onto a truck, only to remember the brakes were gone as the vehicle rolled slightly downhill in mud. Thunder cracked directly overhead. Floodlights flickered violently and died. Darkness swallowed the compound except for lightning, and the pale wash of dawn beginning to fight through storm clouds. Within minutes, the hollow that had been a marketplace for death became an evacuation of predators reclaiming their freedom. The tiger stood near Alex, chest heaving, rain streaking its whiskers. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. He had triggered his distress beacon the moment he cut the generator lines, a signal routed through channels he rarely used. He had always worked alone. Tonight had been different. Headlights cut through trees as state wildlife authorities and law enforcement vehicles tore into the ravine, tires churning mud. Officers poured out, weapons raised, only to find disarmed men soaked and kneeling amid broken fencing. Alex raised his hand slowly. "It's over," he called out. The tiger did not retreat. It remained at his side. Wildlife veterinarians approached cautiously with tranquilizer rifles lowered but ready. The tiger's ears flattened briefly at the sight of new humans. Alex stepped closer to it, placing himself within its line of vision. "It's all right," he said quietly. The tiger's breathing slowed. One vet advanced carefully, voice calm, movements deliberate. A dart struck gently into the tiger's flank. The animal did not lash out. It looked at Alex, not with confusion, not with fear, with recognition. As sedation began to soften its massive frame, Alex stayed beside it, one hand resting lightly against its rain-soaked shoulder. "You're going somewhere better," he murmured. The storm weakened as if exhausted by its own fury. Clouds began to fracture, revealing streaks of pale morning light filtering through towering firs. By the time the tiger was secured onto a reinforced transport carrier marked for a certified sanctuary facility, the rain had slowed to a mist. Authorities moved efficiently, cataloging evidence, cuffing the syndicate's leader, documenting cages and equipment. An officer approached Alex, extending a hand.
You should have called sooner.
She said, not unkindly. He hesitated before shaking it. Working on that, he replied. The transport truck doors closed gently around the sedated tiger. Through a small reinforced window, its striped form remained visible, chest rising steadily. For years, Alex had believed solitude made him effective. That distance kept him sharp. That relying on others only slowed justice. But as he stood there, soaked and exhausted, watching professionals coordinate recovery efforts with precision and resources he'd never allowed himself to use, something shifted. The officer spoke again.
We could use someone who knows how to find what doesn't belong in these woods.
He glanced toward the departing transport. The tiger had trusted him. Not because he was alone. Because he acted. Because he chose partnership when it mattered. He picked up his radio from where it hung at his shoulder. For once, he didn't hesitate before pressing the transmit button. "This is Cole," he said evenly. "I'm available." Morning sunlight finally broke through the canopy, illuminating steam rising from saturated earth. The hollow no longer felt like a graveyard. It felt like reclamation. As the convoy rolled out, poachers in custody, animals bound for safety, Alex remained still for a moment longer. He had come into the forest chasing a rumor. He was leaving part of something larger. The last truck disappeared between trees, carrying a striped guardian toward sanctuary. Alex turned toward the forest path ahead, not as a lone wolf anymore, but as part of a pack.